Hi everyone, my name's Marcus and I'm a dentist. I've got a practice in Huddersfield called The Courtyard, and we are completely digitised, which means we have an iTero scanner in every one of our 7 treatment rooms. Through our digital journey, we've learned more and more that the more we lean into digital, the more value we get from it. So that means consults, it means every single restorative thing from teeth to implants, inclusive of full arch, and more now it means the fabrication of those restorations. So we have developed and built an on-site lab at our practice, but the next chapter of that is on-site real-time fabrication with 3D printing. The reason we chose iTero scanners at the Courtyard is more and more because of this screen. Okay, this screen created a compelling reason for patients to move forward with options that we were giving them. And if we remember long enough ago, the scanners were invented to replace putty impression material. That's why we first bought our scanner, simply to be a digital version of taking impressions. The fact that now a scanner can do so much more than that is again why we love being digital. But our move to iTero was based around this screen. But some of the other accidental benefits we found once we became a big fan of iTero was to do with the clouded nature of the scans. So it might surprise you, but most other scanners don't have a clouded facility. So you still have to keep a hard drive, keep a file name somewhere. Whereas I've always found iTero to be really plug and play. I was never the kind of tech fan that wanted to read a big manual, wanted to have to download drivers. I need all my technology to be instantly helpful, efficient and beneficial to me. And I found that iTero has done that. And once we'd made that first step with iTero, the idea of having a different scanner brand that wasn't linked to that ecosystem just didn't sit well with me. You know, I need every single patient scan I ever take to be, linked to their patient record. And we found so much value in that because, if I click a patient name here, every single scan I've ever taken, every prep, every consult, every checkup is listed and creates this timeline, like a historical timeline of their treatment with us. And even if I just want to know, let's say this patient who we've done 3D printed crown for comes back in 3 years' time with some symptoms, I can immediately, go onto their prep, which had a gold crown before I met it today, and see, the level of depth of that prep. Is it likely that that's got symptoms? And the patient can understand that it wasn't anything that we did. It was, a pre-existing issue that tooth had. So I could talk about these things for hours, but they're just some of the reasons that we have committed to iTero. So we have found so much value in the way that iTero is used in our consultations. And to me, I can't imagine ever going back to a period where we didn't. When I talk about the power of visualization, if I lecture or present, I always have to remind dentists that what we used to do in the olden days is tear a piece of paper towel off the roll and start scribbling to patients on the back of that, and how archaic that sounds to describe what a crown is, what might be wrong with their teeth. But when it's all up on screen, we don't need to do any of that, and the patient sees their problems for themselves and is compelled, to take action. Today, I've taken time out of my consulting day to film these videos, and right now in different rooms in my practice, treatment coordinators, other parts of the clinical team are having these conversations with patients without my input because the scans speak for themselves. So the power of digital and iTero in a restorative workflow is also invaluable. Whether it be the accuracy, the instantaneous way that our lab can access those scans, the visualization that we can have about a historic treatment we undertook, and the results clinically are also compelling. So I carry out about 50 porcelain units a week, all prepped and scanned with the iTero. We carry out 3 full arch implant cases a week, all scanned at time of surgery with the iTero. Then our lab takes those scans and designs, the restorations which we visualize through Exocad until we manufacture and fit those restorations. So we do a high volume here with a lot of efficiency, and every single room has an iTero in it, and every single clinician benefits from an iTero. So there are so many different aspects of the scanner that add value to our working life now, which is why any dentist considering it for the first time, unbelievable value. So we've already talked about its impact in consultations, we've talked about its impact in my restorative workflows, but there's another side to our business which is everyday dentistry, and it's checkups and regular care. So at our practice, we've devolved all of that to our dental therapy team, and it's them that uses the iTero to scan every patient once a year to evaluate there's been no negative changes, and they carry out every single checkup on our 2,000 patients. So within the iTero sort of analytic software, you can check for any changes in inflammation, wear, tooth movement, early caries. So to have that software, to be able to deploy those tools on a screen, in a technical fashion, just gives our dental therapy team so much more power, so to speak, to diagnose in a way that has concrete evidence. And our patients have had, zero, nothing negative to say about that change at all, and they see it as a complete evolution of the checkup itself. So we've had so many benefits from using iTero through our journey, which started in 2018. So we are 6 years in with iTero. Our first scanner we bought in 2014, so we've had a decade in digital. But the advantages really started to gain momentum and compound the more scanners we got, which sounds like a great message for our listeners, but it's true. So the more scanners we got, the more value, the more different clinicians were using them for different things. So I've touched on whether it's diagnostics in a checkup or consultation, or the restorative aspects and the workflow and the way that links to the lab, and now culminating in 3D printing. Only today, the way we can make such quick decisions in real time. So a patient came in, had some sensitivity from an old crown. We would have normally just had a chat about it and sent him on his way. But we offered him the opportunity to have what we call a 1 hour crown, where we scan, prep, scan, design live, 3D print live, and fit him in an hour or so later. It's an efficiency on our clinical time, it's an efficiency in terms of delivering that treatment to him, and it's the case that we're looking at on screen here. So there are so many different levels of value that we get the more we've lent into digital, and the more we've got our broader team to embrace what iTero and digital can offer. First became interested in 3D printing restorations. We just heard a few of the printers were becoming more plug and play, which, as I've mentioned, is important. I've never been one who was going to get involved in technology that created more problems. You need technology to become easier, simpler and more efficient. So we printed 3D models for a very long time. But yeah, there was a bit more noise being made about how we could print 3D printed restorations in real time in an efficient way. So when we first embarked on 3D printing, and I sort of was talking about it on social media, there was a little bit of negative feedback from labs, from technical people, about resin being a substandard material, if you will. And then it was interesting when I spoke to my own technician about these comments, and he said he's in his 60s, he's been around for a very long time, and he said it's just another material. There's been lots of other materials, and it was this assumption that that gold or porcelain bonded to metal were ideal. None of them were ideal, and printed resin is just composite, and dentists love composite, and they're familiar with it. They know how to manipulate it, and so to have it be able to be made accurately outside of the mouth for indirect crowns, we thought we should give it a go. So our first foray into 3D printed restorations was obvious to us, and it had to be the posterior crown. It's such a bread and butter treatment, that patients need all the time. If posterior restoration's got too large or an old crown's not up to scratch anymore. So initially we used our standard workflow and we just changed the material. So we prep, we put a temp on, we'd scan, and then we'd get them back a few weeks later for the crown. And that gave our lab time to work with the material and same workflow, get it on the model, make sure the margins were accurate and fit it. And then we started getting confident and thinking, well, wouldn't it be good if we could do this as a chairside technique, so to speak, as in a same day. And we developed an idea, a concept called the 1 hour crown, based around when we used to, for those people old enough, take your film to a chemist and wait 1 hour while they develop the photos. So could a patient wait an hour and have the definitive crown fitted? And so we developed that and started promoting that. And unsurprisingly, patients were fascinated. They were amazed. They were amazed in the story. That, what do you mean you can 3D print my crown? What do you mean you can make it directly on site? So we launched into that with amazing results. We had a workflow where we take a bite ring of the crown once it was seated to confirm the margins were as we'd like. So we could have this 360-degree feedback loop. And fast forward 9 months, I think, and we have now fitted 1,500 of these posterior crowns on our patients. And our fracture rate on them has been 3, not 3%, but 3. So of those 1,500, we only had 3 that we had to redo, which is normal because, patients break all sorts of crowns. They break zirconia crowns, Emax crowns, all sorts. So 3 out of 1,500 is more than respectable. And we continue. And this patient here today, like I say, came in asking if we could redo his crown, and we said, do you want us to do it right now? And my nursing team were ready to set up, lab team ready to go. And we got him out of practice an hour and a half later with a new resin crown. So with chairside immediate digital dentistry, chairside dentistry has been a concept or a buzzword for maybe 40 years. And it really involves 3 ingredients: scanning, design and fabrication. The scanning happens here. The design and the fabrication have been areas that were up for debate as to who were the best personnel for them. So in some of the early versions, the dentist was doing all of that. They were designing it on software, and then they were even handling the milling and the finishing. And for a while, that was a popular, a modern way of carrying out restorations. Something we did here ourselves, to be fair. But I always felt that, why am I going to get involved in those processes? Even if it was meant to be more cost effective, isn't there better things I should be doing with my time than finishing a restoration myself or designing it myself? But those 3 ingredients are still the workflow today. So in regards to the second ingredient, the designing of that restoration, it's really impressive that Iteria have collaborated with Exocad to form a piece of software where we, in practice, either the dentist, should you so choose, or other members of your team, or other members of personnel that you want to employ, can design those restorations for you with a piece of design software that's intuitive, easy to use, and easy to get hold of. So that software is included. So the big question is, who should be using that software? Like I say, personally for me, I feel my skills are best used in other areas. But there's always been a kind of dentist who wanted that level of control and wanted to create their own restoration. So for those, the Iteria Design Suite is absolutely perfect. Equally, there are other personnel that may be in your practice that you think you can train or introduce to the software, maybe nurses, maybe treatment coordinators. The point I'm making is that, the dental practice, the 21st century dental practice is changing and evolving, and it's now allowing us to design and fabricate our own restorations, and it's up to you, the practice owner, to decide who's going to be the best fit. So the Iteria Design Suite there's a product of the collaboration between Itera and Exocad is a fantastic piece of software that embraces all of the good stuff about modern design. And a lot of design software has often been AI driven, and it generates a proposal, a crown shape taken from a library, based on your prep and your scan and your margin, and creates an initial proposal for you. And then the personnel modify that to some degree, dictate what occlusion they want, affect the shape to some degree, and that's the end of the process. And then it's about sending that file to whatever fabrication system you want. That could be a 3D printer, it could be a mill, whatever you prefer. But what Itera have done is bridge that gap, join the dots for everybody out there who wants to explore chairside dentistry the way we have. The fact that Itera continued to develop pieces of software that we didn't even know we needed is fascinating. So at exactly the right moment where we've started to experiment with in-house chairside fabrication for our patients, the biggest question I would get when I was lecturing on the subject was, who does the designs? Now, there are a lot of third-party design houses you can access, but there's also a great demand in the UK from dentists and practices who want to control that themselves. And I understand that, and clearly so do Itera. And that's what the Itera Design Suite is there for. So how would I manage if some very mean person took away all of my Itera scanners and all of my digital tech? I'd be rubbish if that happened, because there are so many. It's an extension of my hands, an extension of the way we think in practice, the way we consult, the way we diagnose, the way we treatment plan, the way we send files to and from our lab. So it's impossible to think of how we would do dentistry now without it. So, in that vein, I look forward to a time where the entire profession feels like that and knows that they'd be rubbish if they didn't have digital as well.